Now, I'm sure many of you will have come across the TV program, Who Do You Think You Are? And if you're not so sure, a little pressy. Celebrities are taken on a journey, but it's a journey of their personal history. And in that journey, they discover interesting things about their ancestors. And if they are lucky, they discover interesting things about themselves. There was a classic with an actor called Danny Dyer. And those who don't know him, he's, should we say, a character actor on EastEnders. And whilst doing his ancestral background, it was discovered that he's related to not one, but two kings of England. And I think Danny has then used that since to try and enhance his career. It needs a bit of enhancing, poor chap. Now, in some cases, this kind of discovery of personal history has proved to be life-changing. Thankfully, Danny wasn't able to claim the throne, but it got pretty close. In many others, it was an interesting journey, answering familial questions that were often pondered, such as where did they actually come from? Finding out something about who you are can be important. For example, my family never knew where our name came from. And I can tell you now, if you come across another Neno, they're pretty closely related, although we have discovered a branch in Gloucester and a branch in Glasgow. Not quite sure how they got there. But my grandmother used to tell a really lovely story of the Spanish Armada of 1588 and an Iberian prince who was captured off the Somerset coast, having been shipwrecked, and fall in love with a country girl. He returned to the love of his life. Name grew up in the West. Turns out that our name actually predates the Armada, at least 50 years. So Granny's story doesn't really hold true. And the root of the family is actually in North Devon, not in Somerset. But from this family history, we have learnt of our humble beginnings as land labourers and our eventual exodus from the family village to Plymouth during land settlements and the agricultural industrialization of the mid-19th century. Context then can give a lot of meaning and understanding to who we are and why we are where we are. Understanding who we are is also about digging deeper into ourselves, exploring those darker corners of who we are, and bringing to light a clearer understanding of ourselves, growing stronger in ourselves. It's not easy, and it will take a lifetime. We're also often defined by how we're understood by others. In some circles, I'm not fond of being introduced as a vicar, because this can define how people approach, or indeed don't approach me. It took a partner of one of my family members a long time to pluck up courage to speak to me. She'd been told I was a vicar, something completely outside her own personal experience. And she had preconceived ideas of what that meant and how I would react and how I would expect her to behave. All because she'd been told, this is Uncle David, he's a vicar. Paul sets us a challenge in today's reading from his letter to the Romans. He understands that we are all different. We have different gifts, different personalities, and as such have different parts to play in the mission and ministry of God. Paul wants us to be clear too that as Christians, we are a living sacrifice, a holy and acceptable to God. He wants us to understand what it means to be a Christian, to call ourselves followers of Christ. This does require us to look deeply into ourselves, to be prepared for that holy sacrifice, which is to conform to the will of God and not the fashions of the day, the wiles of the world. We are born again through water and the Spirit at our baptism. And that means that we have a new start, a new way of living and of life that is called to be God-centered. Jesus wanted to know what was being said about him. And through asking this question, I am, he encourages his disciples to him. And it's placing their answer, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And this came from deep within, from his experience and in Jesus. From what he saw and from what he felt. This is Jesus' question to all who claim to follow him. If we, like Peter, claim Jesus as the Messiah, the Son of the living God, then we're also saying something deep and important about who we are. No longer followers of fashion or of the ways of the world, but of Jesus who calls us to proclaim the healing love of God in the world. So today, ponder that question for yourselves. Who do I say Jesus is? See where your answer leads you.